back. College basketball heat check with my man Eli B. It is we're keeping it hot. We're keeping it hot. Our first full episode of the season. We did one earlier with Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated and Coast to Coast, and then we've done some interviews. But now we're going to dive into the new format. So, first topic: undefeated teams. We'll go through the undefeated teams, talk a little bit about each one, and then we'll kind of go through a couple other hot teams and go through the rest of our schedule. And of course, you can find Heat Check content at heatcheck.com and also on Heat Check CBB on Twitter. What's the website actually?
Yeah, Heat Check CBB for website too.
Yeah, Heat Check
Yep.
CBB. So you want to follow all the college basketball hot content, and then of course you can find stuff on All Access, YouTube, and website coming soon. But you know where to find us on social as well. So, getting right to it, without further ado, let's talk about the undefeated teams. What would you like to talk about first? You want to go straight from the top?
Yeah, I might as well go with the defending champs, right? They just keep it going. Yeah, with Baylor, we had John Jacobs on this show and spoke with him about
Yep.
a lot of almost off the court type things with this team, and they've placed so much value in what's become kind of a buzzword and overused term in culture and just the value of team chemistry. But I think with Baylor, you have to value that. And Coach Jacobs spoke at length about Scott Drew's personality and his positivity, and Jerome Tang follows that to a T. We've had him on All Access Network as well. But when you get to the point to winning a national championship, which is a feat that plenty of talented coaches and players and programs have never done before, that's one thing. But to follow that up with losing arguably your four most important players from the national championship team, to then bringing in a high-level transfer in James Akinjo, to bringing in a freshman in Kendall Brown, and also counting on a lot of these freshmen and sophomores who were in smaller roles last season, and having that all work out to what will likely be a 12-0 start to the season, if not more. This winning streak could continue. That's such a huge testament to this coaching staff and what they've done. So Baylor, once again, is primed to be in a position to get another number one seed. And we've seen so many teams in the past, Brian, that have had that kind of hangover after a national championship for whatever reason. And
Right.
a lot of defending champs haven't even made it to the second weekend. But this team is doing its thing. It's deep. It's talented. And LJ Crier's been a breakout guy. Kendall Brown's been amazing. James Akinjo is holding it down the point guard spot. It's a really, really impressive team, and it defends at an exceptionally high level.
Yeah, impressive to watch them reload after having such a loaded team and losing so many integral parts. It's impressive to see them defend at the same kind of level, high level as last year again. And then, yeah, they got a big matchup, I believe, January 1st against Iowa State. So the battle of the undefeateds to start Big 12 play. So we'll definitely get to see where both teams stack at that point, but excited about what Baylor's done. Not surprised. I think it's amazing. I think somebody messaged this the other day and put this out. I think they've lost 6 games in the last 3 years regular season and won almost 70 games. So been really incredible to see what they've done. Scott Drew just got his 400th win. Congratulations to him. And yeah, I think just their staff and their formula is really working at a high level. It's not a one-hit wonder. It's not just like a one-time thing. They're consistently proving that they're one of the best programs in the country, and again at the very top. So excited to see what Baylor continues to do as they keep going. Let's go to the next team that's undefeated, which is Arizona.
Yeah, with Arizona bringing in Tommy Lloyd, I think there was enough on this roster to see Arizona being a quality team, whether that is a team that could sneak into the NCAA tournament and maybe win a game. But what the Wildcats have done so far this season under Lloyd, who's the running mate with Mark Few for so long at Gonzaga, it's been so impressive. And this team plays at one of the highest tempos in America, tremendous defense. But I think what separates this team is how well they pass the ball. They have Kirk Kriisa, who's leading the way, who's just been a phenomenal distributor for them. Azulis Tubelis is has been kind of a breakout guy as well. He showed some signs last season, and it's just such a mix of crazy length, crazy athleticism, guys who can run up and down the floor and play and defend multiple positions. And it's just seems like it's such a hard formula to beat. But I think Arizona's they've gotten some quality wins. They have 2 Big Ten wins over Illinois and Michigan. But this next stretch is coming up at Tennessee, at UCLA, at USC, and that's going to be a huge stretch. This could be an 11-3 team. This could be a 14-0 team that's the number 1 team in the country. It can go a variety of different ways, but the offense is electric. It is such a fun team to watch. We know what Tommy Lloyd can do with these international guys, like he did with Gonzaga, and he's doing it so far.
Yeah, he's exceeded expectations. I think early on, I think people lowered their expectations for first year Arizona. Kind of gave him a pass because of some of the transition and some of the stuff happening there. But yeah, they've exceeded expectations so far. Big time matchup tonight, if I'm not mistaken, against Tennessee, right? That's a heavyweight bout right there at Tennessee on the road. So it'll probably be their best test to this point on the road. Not to mention, like you said, they play UCLA, USC in conference play. So it gets fun. Arizona's exceeded expectations. They look like the best team in the Pac-12 so far, and excited to see how that kind of unfolds over the next coming weeks. It's always good when it starts getting in conference play because teams know each other more and they know tendencies and coaching characteristics. So looking forward to those matchups. Let's go to another undefeated in Iowa State. Tell us what you think about them so far.
Yeah, I think of all of the undefeated teams so far, I think Iowa State has to be the biggest surprise. TJ Altenberger, he had his ups and downs as UNLV head coach, and I think there is a pretty significant talent drain most off seasons with the transfer portal and guys leaving to go pro and things like that. But he's done a phenomenal job. He's got a great staff there. Iowa State defends at an extremely high level. Already have some quality wins away from home. They beat Creighton, they beat Xavier, and also Memphis, and have a blowout win over in-state rival Iowa. And it's a 12-0 team that was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. And I think the analytics haven't quite caught up to Iowa State yet. I think when I most recently checked, I think Iowa State was still pegged to finish 6th or 7th in the Big 12. And that's more of a testament to the Big 12 than anything. But it's a mishmash of some returning guys who are stepping up. Tyrese Hunter, a freshman from the state of Wisconsin, where Iowa State's had a great pipeline there in recent years, as we've talked about on Heat Check. He's been a breakout guy as a sub 50, sub 60 freshman, great assist rate, talented defender. And the staff is just making it work. It's not like these guys were extremely high profile transfers that they brought in. Some of these guys are coming from small schools, but the buy-in has been great, and they're defending at a high level, which is pretty rare for any team that has a first-year head coach. And I'm excited to see where Iowa State goes from here. And I think that test against Baylor will be a huge one on New Year's Day. They're going to be hosting Baylor, and that's going to be kind of a gut check game, a game between 2 undefeated top 10 teams. And I think that will I don't think they have to win that game to prove their legitimacy, but I think that's a pretty big opportunity to step up and show their worth.
Yeah, their first test they really overcame. I felt like was, well, maybe not first, but their first big test after they had some buzz was that Iowa rivalry game, and they really played at a high level in that game. I think that Baylor game with them is going to be really good. We had one of their assistant coaches, J.R. Blunt, on, and he spoke about their team and that point guard play and kind of some of the transfers that they've gotten with that chip on their shoulder, and give TJ credit for how he's led his team to this point. And it looks like he will have a great formula for Iowa State continuing as he goes. To be able to hit the ground running, this looks like the coach and the leader that everybody thought he was going to be. Even coming to UNLV, that one was a little bit different. He was fortunate to get this opportunity, and he's taking it and running with it like he belongs. Excited for TJ and the staff there. So we'll transition to LSU, another one of the probably more surprising teams in the country to be undefeated still.
Yeah, LSU under Will Wade, this hasn't necessarily been a great defensive team, and Will Wade hasn't had a top 50 defense at LSU his entire tenure there. And last year that was their biggest weakness. They were sub 100 in defensive efficiency, I think, both of the last 2 years. And this year, the Tigers lead the nation in defensive efficiency. So it's been a major step up. A lot of these guys are returning players like Darius Diggs, Xavier Pinson, and I think the main breakout we have to talk about here is Tari Eason and what he's done. The Cincinnati transfer, he's a product of Seattle, so I have to give him a shout out for that. But he's been playing just tremendous on both sides of the basketball, rebounding at a high level, but defensively, forcing missed shots, stealing passes. This team is not used to being defense first, but that's absolutely been the case so far for Will Wade and his staff. And the SEC for quite some time, it was looking like it could be a mix of maybe 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different teams that could win this league. And LSU absolutely has to be in that conversation right now as one of the first tier teams in the SEC. And it's a credit to this staff and what they've made work. Really experienced, physical, athletic team. And unlike most years where LSU has an NBA type scorer on their roster, this year's team is extremely defensive oriented. So it's fun to see some of these teams adapt and play in different ways, and that's been the case with LSU so far.
Yeah, LSU is definitely a surprise team, doing it in a different way than they normally have. May not even have the high profile name that you're kind of used to, scoring points and getting buckets. So shout out to LSU and the SEC that looks pretty wide open. We'll transition next to another undefeated team. We'll get to Colorado State last. We'll go mid-major, but we'll go USC, another high major Power 5 team that's unexpectedly undefeated. Some people still skeptical about how good they really are, but to this point, they haven't lost a game, so they're undefeated.
Yeah, UCLA got the bulk of the headlines heading into the season out of the Pac-12, but USC is one of now 2 undefeated teams out of the Pac-12, and I think for this team, they've proven that they can win close games. They've had some tight tests. They snuck past Temple. They got past Washington State on the road. That was a close one. They've had some recent close calls against UC Irvine, and Long Beach State was close for a little bit. So they're tested in the sense that they've played close games. A lot of these other teams that have really good win-loss records have just blown out their competition and haven't faced the type of late game scenarios. So I think for better or worse, that is something that USC can tip its cap on. But I really like the addition of Boogie Ellis. I think there's a pretty natural fit for him returning to the West Coast after playing with Memphis for a couple years, and he sets the table for this team. USC lost a lot from last season, most notably Evan Mobley, but his brother Isaiah has been great. He's been a really great 3-point threat despite his size and his rebounding ability. So he's a tremendous in and out option. And USC's kind of snuck under the radar. I think a lot of people are still kind of, as you said, not entirely sure what this team is capable of. They did have a fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but manageable non-conference slate, but it starts to rev up pretty quickly, and they'll have an upcoming date against Arizona. And they have some other tests in league play that will prove their worth. But I think as far as where they're going to finish in the Pac-12, I think anything lower than third is probably out of the question. I think they're definitely one of the primary contenders out of this league.
Yeah, it looks like it. And Pac-12, we talked about UCLA, we talked about Arizona. Not always given the recognition of the Power 5 conferences as being one of the stronger ones. As they get into conference play, seeing how those teams play out will dictate that a lot. And shout out to older brother in the NBA for Cleveland that didn't get as much hype in the draft as some of the guards because he's not as flashy, but man, is he really getting it done and proving to be a legitimate pro and has the Cavs as a playoff team right now mixed with the 2 guards, Darius Garland and, well, I guess the other young man got hurt for the year. But anyway, Cleveland Cavs are doing good. He's doing good. Let's go to our last mid-major team, our only mid-major team and that's still undefeated, which is Colorado State. They've been on fire since the beginning, haven't stopped, really kind of carrying over from last year's team and their season last year. And it looks like this team is proven to be as legit as many people thought, including myself and yourself, and maybe even better. They're up to top 21 in the country. Coach Nico Medvedev has done a great job. And tell us a little bit what you see in this Colorado State team so far.
Yeah, it's an impossible offense to slow down. CSU leads the nation in 3-point percentage and effective field goal percentage. It's just nothing but capable shot makers all across the floor. And we've had Isaiah Stevens on this show, talk to him about his skill set and his development. He's one of the best passers in the country. David Roddy has really filled out his skill set in terms of being a 3-level scorer, and he's just impossible to defend. But I think what's made this team really go is the development of John Tonje, and he was somewhat of a role player last season. He had a big game against SDSU where he hit the game winner, but still somewhat of a role guy last season. And he's emerged, even though he is coming off the bench. He only has one start this season. He's shooting almost 60% from deep. He's had some extremely key 3-pointers and moments on offense. And I think a lot of people who were skeptical of CSU wanted to see someone besides Isaiah Stevens or David Roddy step up. And I think John Tonje has filled that role exceptionally well. CSU takes care of the basketball. They score at a high rate. And it's just it's a tough offense to slow down. It dropped 109 on Oral Roberts to start the season. Already have some quality wins against Creighton, St. Mary's, and Mississippi State. Unfortunately, the Alabama game wasn't played due to COVID protocols, but I still think there's enough meat on this non-conference schedule that the Rams can feel pretty good about where they're standing in terms of at-large contention, which is a great spot to be this time of year if you're a mid-major to, don't have to press about particular games and things like that. But one of the best offenses in the country, regardless of league affiliation. And it's a credit to Nico Medved and his staff and the way that they've developed all these guys for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, built it from kind of the ground up. The Larry Eustace kind of end of that tenure. I was fortunate to coach against Colorado State at that time at Fresno to see what they've built and done it with those two freshmen kind of being the bookends, Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy, and have just plugged in guys in between and around that have a skill set that complements. It's just been cool to see this team take the next step with multiple guys, really. And you talked about Tonje, which he deserves his credit, but they've had multiple guys be able to step up in different games and make big threes or get big stops. And I think that's been a cool thing about them is they have 2 elite level players in this league and in the country. But on top of that, they just have a collection of guys, almost in the sense of like the Golden State Warriors during their run, where it's like you get these guys, Deshaun Livingston off the bench, or Iguodala, or Draymond Green, or you get these guys contributing and playing at a high level where you're keying in on these 2 guys to stop them, and they have enough firepower around it. And they've had some huge comebacks, partly because they're so dynamic offensively that once they get going, it's kind of hard to stop. So we'll move forward to the next part of the program, which will be some shout outs. We'll give some shout outs to some more. We'll give 4 other programs that are not undefeated. We'll let Eli get 2. I'll get 2 and just kind of give their program and coaches some shout outs. So I'll start with 2 on top of my head. Missouri State being one in the Missouri Valley. I know that Illinois Chicago, Loyola Chicago has played at a super high level, and I believe Sean Paul has them number 1 in the mid-major poll right now. But in that same league, we saw Drake do well last year. We saw Missouri State have a great year last year, and it felt like at times maybe 3 teams could have gotten into the tournament. I think Missouri State's kind of a dark horse to jump into the league and jump in for the league title with Loyola Chicago, and also potentially be a tournament team. Dana Ford's done a great job his whole time there. This team has majority of those guys back, added a player that I used to coach in Jalen Manette, who just got newcomer of the week from IUPUI. He's shooting the ball at extremely high level. You talk about heat check. He deserves his shout out for the way he's played. And always knew he had it in him. He just wasn't in a winning situation at the time at IUPUI, but you take him and put him in to a winning situation. He's accepted that 6-man kind of Jason Terry role, come in and have the green light, and has shot it really well. So I want to give shout out to Missouri State. I believe they're 8-4, if I'm not mistaken, on the season, playing some really good basketball. And then next, I want to give shout out to King Rice and Monmouth. They played at a really high level. They have a huge matchup against Hofstra coming up. They've also played well. Speedy Claxton's done a great job with his club, but this Monmouth team has some good transfers, playing extremely well, and King Rice deserves some recognition for how they've done as well. And then I'll pass the mic over to Eli and let him get the next one that way. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go with a couple teams that had statement wins on Tuesday night. The first one being Davidson, just had their first top 10 wins since Steph Curry was on the team, and they beat Wisconsin. That was the program's most recent top 10 victory. Notched one Tuesday night against Alabama, and that's a massive win for at-large hopes. Yeah, you have to have that signature win, and now a victory over an Alabama team that's probably not going to be any worse than maybe a 3 or a 4 seed. That's always going to be on Davidson's resume, and that will help build moving forward. But this team is just so much fun to watch, as are most Bob McKillop teams, the way that they spread the ball around, the way that they have shooters. Hyunjung Lee, just a phenomenal shooter at 6'7". He can hit from all angles. He can drive it to the basket. He's a pleasure to watch. And I think the addition of Foster Loyer, the Michigan State guard transfer, he's been huge as well. And he had a massive opening night. He was kind of seen as a guy who maybe wasn't ready to play at the high major level, and now he's setting the table for Davidson and doing a great job at that. It's a team that could shoot the ball exceptionally well. We talked about Colorado State leading the nation 3-point percentage. Well, number 2 is Davidson, and there aren't any bad losses on this resume. The only losses are against San Francisco and New Mexico State, and both of those are away from home, so that won't be any worse than probably a Q2 loss. So,
and both those teams, I mean, are bordering being in quad 1, right?
Yeah,
I mean, may be in quad 1 now. They just had a tough stretch the last couple games, but and New Mexico State's played well as well. So yeah, those teams are not, they're high level teams. It should be considered in that tournament as well. So they've had some really good losses.
Yeah, and I want to say San Francisco and New Mexico State are a combined maybe 23-3 or something like that. It's not teams that are going to damage the resume at all. And I think now we're seeing that Davidson will probably be a lock to finish top 2, top 3 in the A10, and that will position this team to be right on the cusp of getting that large bid. So I think that victory against Alabama, which was actually the makeup game from what CSU is supposed to play. So Davidson slid in, got the big win. Right? Yeah, it's funny how it works. And now that's going to set the Wildcats for a good run moving forward. And I think the other team I want to give a shout out to is Utah Valley, which is, we talk about New Mexico State. Grand Canyon gets a lot of headlines out of the WAC. Also the new additions in Abilene Christian and Stephen F. Austin. But Mark Madsen and this Wolverines program, they're going to make things interesting. They already have a home win over BYU. That was an extremely impressive victory to shock the Cougars. And then Tuesday night went up to Seattle and beat Washington in pretty convincing fashion. And this team does a great job maximizing possessions. Fardaz Amack is probably the best rebounder in America. He's a monster. He finds his way to the basketball. He's not this bully inside. He's got a kind of a 3 or a 4 type stature, but he has a nose for the basketball. His off night, he gets a double-double, and he's just a machine. They've got shooters around as well. It's a team that has capable 3-point shooting. Connor Harding. They also have UNLV transfer Trey Woodbury, who's been injured, but once he returns, I think that'll be another impact here. But they've played well in their biggest games, and I think we'll see New Mexico State and Grand Canyon get the WAC headlines, but we could look up, and Utah Valley could be an extremely dangerous out when it comes to the WAC tournament. And it's a big credit to Mark Madsen, who's really starting to figure this thing out.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of figuring out, I mean, they won the conference last year, and people almost forget that because Grand Canyon went to the tournament. Utah Valley shared the regular season championship. Coach Madsen did earn his contract extension, and he's taken that momentum and continue to build on that with the huge win at BYU. And like you said, just picking up more and more big wins. So the WAC will be a great conference to follow. And just like we do with the Mountain West show, we'll actually have our first WAC show this year. So for those that are tuned in, stay locked in for more WAC updates coming second semester. Let's go kind of closing out the show. Heat check shoutouts. We have some great player shoutouts, kind of a new formula, if you will. Next time we'll make sure to put it on the screen and put it up there for you. But we have weekly shoutouts. So we'll go first with our transfer shoutout. We're kind of a little bit behind, so we're kind of catching up on the first semester of play, but just want to give a couple shout outs to some of the transfers out there. I'm going to have my first pick completely biased, but yet he's earned it. And that's Bryson Williams, another young man I was fortunate to coach at UTEP and Fresno State. He's proven to be elite everywhere he's been, and it's just been amazing to watch him at Texas Tech do what he's doing in a Power 5 conference. Finally kind of getting that opportunity. Didn't have a great game against Gonzaga, but no one really did from Texas Tech that particular night. But Bryson Williams is shooting above 65% from the floor, has scored it at a high rate, has been a huge factor for Texas Tech and gives them an inside presence where they know they can score. And I think he'll be a first team, second team type of all Big 12 performer when it's all said and done over at Texas Tech. That's Bryson Williams. And I know you had a great pick out of the Midwest, mid-ranger wise, as you want to talk about.
Yeah, I really like what Jamal Cain has done with Oakland. And the Horizon League has proven to be one of those leagues that is going to produce teams that are capable of winning in March. And Jamal Cain coming over from Marquette, he transferred down, so to speak, but I mean, he's playing extremely high level. He's doubled his points per game scoring average. He's averaging 20 and 10 on the year as a kind of a 6'7" wing forward type slash guy. And I mean, he's just producing every single night. And Oakland is going to be tough in this league. I know they've got Cleveland State. They all have some other kind of upstart teams in this league, but Oakland, I think, is starting to assert itself as a leader in this conference. And this team can play an exceptionally high level. And I think Jamal Cain gets a lot of credit for going off the beaten path and finding his role and doing so with a team that could very well win a game come March, and just producing at a really, really high level so far this season.
Yeah, shout out to Sean Paul again. He kind of recognized him as being one of the best transfers to go down. A lot of guys have made the transfer down and up. He's been one of the better ones. Going freshman next, I'll let myself lead the way. Picking Taryn Anderson out of Cal Baptist. Was able to watch him play, kind of studying Northern Colorado, doing some broadcasting for them with ESPN. So watching them on the road, they played against Cal Baptist, and that was the first time I was introduced to this young man. And true freshman, has great size for the position. I believe he's still leading the nation in assists. Kind of a walking triple-double. Not an explosive score, but a keeps you honest kind of score. Really decisive in pick and roll. Really crafty. Kind of a – I don't want to say Luka because he doesn't have the same kind of scoring ability, but just the ability to play make and create for others kind of reminds you of a Jason Kidd-esque, just a bigger guard who can really pass and find people and looking to pass first, but can keep you honest in scoring. So really excited about what that young man's done so far in his play. And another guy coming from the WAC conference, it's cool to see an unheralded, untalked about freshman come into college basketball and lead the nation in any category. So he's been an on-fire freshman so far. I know you had a good choice yourself too.
Yeah, I'm going back to Iowa State, who we've discussed, and picking Tyrese Hunter, who wasn't seen as one of these star-studded transfers. He was still a top 100 guy, but his impact on Iowa State is one of the reasons why the Cyclones have gone from being picked last in the league to now being potentially one of the better teams in college basketball and being ranked top 10 nationally. And just what Tyrese Hunter has done in terms of being both an offensive and a defensive threat. He's a tremendous passer. He's got a great eye for his teammates. And then on the defensive side, he knows when to pick his spots. He knows when not to gamble too much, but also knows when to be aggressive and try to force turnovers, force steals. And even as a freshman, I think he's taken on a leadership role with this team and kind of been the glue to put it all together, because there is so many moving parts on this roster with new transfers that have come in, some of these young guys. But Tyrese Hunter is already playing at a level like he's been there before, and like he's maybe not a freshman, but more so a junior or a senior. And it's been impressive what the staff has done with all these guys, but especially Tyrese Hunter and making it work with him on this roster. So it's been really impressive.
Yeah, I would agree, and yeah, we talked about Iowa State earlier, and just looking forward to continuing to see what they do as conference play and some of the rivalries get going in the Big 12. But he definitely deserves his due. Let's go with our last. So I'm going bias now. I'm going straight Texas for my last two. I kind of went Texas with Bryson, even though he's from California. He played at UTEP, and he's currently at a Texas school. But LJ Cryer is my breakout player I want to acknowledge. Houston kid, has been a part of Baylor's program and kind of in a way that they kind of passed the baton. You have all those really good players you got to watch and compete against and play a small role. And now he's really broken out and played at a high level for the Bears. Again, the best team in the country by many estimation. And he's a big reason why, because he's just been able to do it on both sides of the ball. We've always known he was a bucket. Anybody that knows him from Texas knew he was a bucket and knew that's why they recruited him. Super high character young man as well, but he's really been impressive how he's played on both ends, and a big reason why Baylor is at the top of the polls yet again. And then I'll pass the baton to you for your breakout player.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin, and I don't think I don't think anyone expected him to be at this elite level, All-American type guy so far this season. Possibly even in an Naismith conversation if Wisconsin is a top 20 type team. But I saw him up close in the Maui Invitational in Vegas, and he just seems so steady with the basketball. And it didn't matter what the defenses were throwing at him; he was just going to get his own. And I'm impressed by his ability to just always be composed and just has this kind of mature sense about him. He's never getting too high or too low when he misses shots, and it's just so steady. And I think a lot of these guys who are extremely talented or athletic or quick or all these other attributes, they can kind of get a little too ahead of themselves. But with Davis, I just get the sense that he is just so steady. He's not trying to be overpowering or trying to play out of his role. And just kind of with the mix of the other Wisconsin guys who have stepped up and developed throughout the season, to now have a legit 20, 25 point scorer in Davis, who really was not that type of player last season. I don't know where this breakout came from. I don't know what he did in the offseason, but man, it's a pleasure to watch right now and what he's done. And Wisconsin's not your typical spot to look for these types of wings and go-to scorers and guys who can hit at all three levels, but Davis has been doing all of that and then some. So he's been a really impressive guy so far this season.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. And to close it out, we'll go with our on fire picks. Usually a returner, but just somebody who's just playing on fire. Again, Texas bias being shown. I was fortunate to be able to coach this young man at some camps coming up. His rising senior year, and then actually was able to recruit him as well to UTEP when I was there. Didn't get him, unfortunately, but didn't have to coach against him because I was out of there. So anyway, that being said, Kenneth Lofton from Louisiana Tech. Everyone, if you don't know this name, he should be a household name by now. If you don't know him, you're completely sleeping. Made a breakout moment last summer with the USA team. Really dominant performances there. Arguably the best big man in the country at any level, averaging a double-double, almost a 20 and 10, 19 and 11 type of guy. I think he's averaging right at 17 and 11. But any time he plays is automatic a night that he may go off for a monster night. Demands a double team, really, really crafty, and just love the presence that he's brought. Won the conference, tied for a conference, I believe, or won their side of the conference in Conference USA last year. One of the better teams, mid-major wise, again, in La Tech. Eric Conkel's done a great job. So just want to give shout out to the Golden Triangle young man from Port Arthur, Texas, and Kenneth Lofton.
Yeah, for me, I'll go to the West Coast and tab Jamari Bouillier from San Francisco, who we've talked about on this show with Todd Golden and with then undefeated San Francisco at the time of our recording. But Bouillier has been just dominant, and he does it in a way that's quiet. He's one of these players who can put up 20, and you might think he only has 10. He just has this way about him. And I think we talked about this, but the performance against Fresno State is a really good indication of the type of player he is. He only had 2 points in the first half. He was kind of struggling, and at halftime, he pulled the team together and exploded for 25 in the second half to come back and beat Fresno State and avoid that loss. But Bouillier is a great scorer, and he hits so many difficult shots. His ability to hit difficult shots and make it look easy is probably one of his best traits. And I found the other day some of the players who I believe were shooting above 40% from the field, and how many of those shots were actually assisted. And I think only about a third of Jamari Bouillier's 3-pointers this season have been assisted. So he's doing this in a way where he's not a catch and shoot guy necessarily. He can do it, but
Right.
a lot of these 3-pointers that he's making are coming off the dribble, or he's having to evade the defense or create his own shot against double teams, or hitting in the mid range. He just has such a great offensive skill set, and he's able to distribute the basketball as well. And he's one of the reasons why San Francisco's off to one of, if not its best start in program history.
Yeah, absolutely. And great job of acknowledging some players. We're shutting down the show today with the games to watch upcoming. I think most nights, I mean, you kind of can look at the calendar and find some games that you want to see. But a huge one tonight is that Tennessee game we talked about with Arizona. I think Rick Barnes at home is as good of a coach as there is, and this team has enough talent. They're a top 25 level team. They've had some games where maybe they've been a little underwhelming in some expectations, but I expect them. They're always going to be tough. They're always going to play well. So I would say that game is a big one to watch. I think they want to prove where they belong, and Arizona wants to still kind of prove that they belong at the top. So that'll be a big one. Diamond Head Classic is always a good one to watch. I think that event is just always one of those right around the Christmas time period where you can still stay tuned in to really good basketball. And then we've talked about this one too, the Battle of Undefeated's coming up with Baylor and Iowa State on the first, along with a lot of conference play will get started on the first. So I think just being able to watch for conference play matchups to start the beginning of the year. I know there's bowl games, but college basketball, we watch conference play. So let pass it to Eli, and then we'll shut it down.
Yeah, one of the games that I'm interested in is actually next week on the 30th is Michigan at UCF. The Wolverines go on the road to play a UCF team that I think really needs a quality win, and Michigan hasn't been necessarily what we thought they were going to be heading into this season. I still think that they're probably a top 4 seed by Selection Sunday, but UCF is going to be in that conversation for an at-large bid, and having a victory over Michigan would be huge. And the fact that UCF will be able to host this game is just an added advantage. So I have my eyes on that one. Arizona at UCLA is also on the 30th. That's a massive, massive game. And then I even think if you want to look at maybe some of the smaller teams out there, some of the guys that maybe aren't getting enough credit, James Madison at Towson, that's an interesting one. On New Year's Eve, Towson is going to be a team that could potentially be a Cinderella if they make it to the tournament. I like what that roster has in store. And then even on New Year's Day, in addition to the Baylor-Iowa State game, you also have San Francisco at St. Mary's. And we've talked at length about the WCC and the strength of that league. That's a huge matchup to start. San Francisco has to go at St. Mary's and at Gonzaga to start league play, and it doesn't get any more challenging than that in the WCC. So plenty of good games upcoming. We've got all the holiday festivities and things like that, bowl games and NBA games on Christmas and everything like that, but still plenty of notable, important college basketball games to watch over the next week or so. I think we got you on mute, B.
I'm back.
There we go.
That's the Tech show for this week. Keeping it hot. I had to keep you on your toes with a little bit of the mute button, but enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas. We will see you guys next week and look forward to it. Thanks so much.